holiday, I gleaned some little facts from the History Channel website and put together a few thoughts. Some may be known, some, as for me, known for the first time as I did this little research. So I thought I'd share that in honor of Memorial Day. While the first commemorative Memorial Day events weren't held in the United States until the late 19th century, the practice of honoring those who have fallen in battle dates back thousands of years. The ancient Greeks and Romans held annual days of remembrance for loved ones, including soldiers, each year, festooning their graves with flowers and holding public festivals and feasts in their honor. In Athens, public funerals for fallen soldiers were held after each battle, with the remains of the dead on display for public mourning before a funeral procession took them to their internment in Keramikos, one of the city's most prestigious cemeteries. One of the first known public tributes to the dead was in 431 BC, when the Athenian general and statesman Pericles delivered a funeral oration praising the sacrifice and valor of those killed in the Peloponnesian War, a speech that some have compared in tone to Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. One of the earliest commemorations was organized by recently freed slaves. As the Civil War neared its end, thousands of Union soldiers held as prisoners of war were herded into a series of hastily built assembled camps in Charleston, South Carolina. Conditions at one of the camps, a former racetrack near the city's citadel, were so bad that more than 250 prisoners died from disease or exposure and were buried in a mass grave behind the track's grandstand. 3 weeks after the Confederate surrender, an unusual procession entered the former camp. On May 1st in 1865, more than 1,000 recently freed slaves, accompanied by regiments of the U.S. colored troops, including Massachusetts 54th Infantry, and a handful of white Charlestonians gathered in the camp to consecrate a new proper burial site for the Union dead. The group sang hymns, gave readings, and distributed flowers around the cemetery, which they dedicated to the martyrs of the race course. In 1868, General John A. Logan, the commander-in-chief of the Union Veterans Group, known as the Grand Army of the Republic, issued a decree that May 30th should become a national day of commemoration for the more than 620,000 soldiers killed in the recently ended Civil War. On Decoration Day, as Logan dubbed it, Americans should lay flowers and decorate the graves of the war dead, who, he said, whose bodies now lie in almost every city, village, and hamlet churchyard in the land. According to legend, Logan chose May 30th because it was a rare day that didn't fall on the anniversary of any Civil War battle, though some historians believe the date was selected to ensure that flowers across the country would be in full bloom to be able to be used. After the war, Logan, who had served as a U.S. congressman before resigning to join the Army, returned to his political career, and eventually serving in both the House and the Senate, and was the unsuccessful Republican candidate for vice president in 1884. When he died 2 years later, Logan's body laid in state in the rotunda of the United States Capitol. Today, Washington, D.C.'s Logan Circle and several townships across the country are named in honor of this champion of the veterans and those killed in battle. Logan proudly adapted the idea from his events in the South. Americans embraced the notion of Decoration Day immediately. In the first year, more than 27 states held some sort of ceremony, with more than 5,000 people in attendance at a ceremony at the Arlington National Cemetery. By 1890, Every former state of the Union had adopted it as an official holiday. But for more than 50 years, the holiday was used to commemorate those killed just in the Civil War, not in any of the other American wars. It wasn't until America's entry into World War I that the tradition was expanded to include those killed in all wars, and Memorial Day was not officially recognized nationwide until the 1970s, with America deeply embroiled in the Vietnam War. It was a long road from Decoration Day to the official Memorial Day. And although the term Memorial Day was used beginning in the 1880s, the holiday was officially known as Decoration Day for more than a century, when it was changed by federal law. 4 years later, the Uniform Monday Holiday Act of 1968 finally went into effect, moving Memorial Day from its traditional observance on May 30th, regardless of the day of the week, to a set day, the last Monday in May. The move has not been without controversy. Veteran groups concerned that more Americans associate the holiday with first long weekend of the summer, and not its intended purpose to honor the nation's war day, continue to lobby for it to be returned to May 30th observance. Despite the increasing celebration of the holiday as a summer rite of passage, there are some formal rituals still on the books. The American flag should be hung at half-staff until noon of Memorial Day, then raised to the top of the staff. And since 2000, when the U.S. Congress passed legislation, all Americans are encouraged to pause for a national moment of remembrance at 3 p.m. local time. The federal government has also used the holiday to honor non-veterans, but the Lincoln Memorial was dedicated on Memorial Day, 1922.
It's from John chapter 21, verses 15 to 19. After breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these others?" "Yes," Peter replied. "You know I am your friend." "Then feed my lambs," Jesus told him. Jesus repeated the question, "Simon, the son of John, do you really love me?" "Yes, Lord," Peter said. "You know I am your friend." "Then take care of my sheep," Jesus said. Once more he asked him, "Simon, son of John, are you even my friend?" Peter was grieved at the way Jesus kept asking this question a third time. "Lord, you know my heart. You know I am," he said. Jesus said, "Then feed my little sheep. When you were young, you were able to do as you liked and go wherever you wanted to. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hand, and others will direct you and take you where you don't want to go." Jesus said this to let him know what kind of death he would die to glorify God. Then Jesus told him, "Follow me." The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. On this Memorial Day holiday weekend, we've lifted up the true meaning of the holiday, how it has been a remembrance day of those who have given up their lives for the service of our country. And we were reminded it on this federal holiday to take that time at 3 o'clock tomorrow to be in silence, prayer and affirmation, sacrifices which have been made, and to recognize it visually by lowering and then raising our flag from half-staff. And as we think about that which is before us and that which has been behind us, we are reminded that we are called to remember because we are where we are today, living in a land and its foundations of freedom and the value of every human being based on the men and the women who have served our country, both domestically and abroad, to bring those freedoms. And we thank all of our veterans that on this day, especially, because they carry with them those experiences, and they can share with us the intense need to hold on to those truths which have been given with such a sacrifice. And it's interesting as we listen to this scripture on this particular day, Memorial Day weekend, because that is exactly what Jesus is sharing with his disciple Peter at this time. If you remember the call to worship, you are being charged. Children of God, do you love? 3 times. And my guess is by the time we got to the 3rd section of that, and I asked you one more time, do you love the God who breathes new life into us as we gather this day? You're probably saying, it's pretty repetitious. She's already asked us 3 times, do we love? Well, that's exactly what was happening with Peter. Now remember that this comes at the conclusion of the passage which we had last week, which was the passage of the breakfast on the beach with Jesus. Remember that Jesus had seen that the disciples had left Jerusalem, where they were instructed to stay until the coming of the Holy Spirit. And they had left and they had returned to fishing. It might have been that Peter was instrumental in that, saying, I've got to be back in my comfort zone. I've got to go to that safe harbor. I've got to go out and do the things I need to do, because I really don't know what to do with myself. And it may have been him that led them into that place. But Jesus went there and met them, and there they were on the beach having grilled fish and bread, and they were having fellowship time, and Jesus was affirming who they were as his disciples, that he came and visited them again and charged them in those conversations. But then he took Peter aside, and he dealt with Peter specifically. Now this comes on the tails of knowing that Peter had denied Jesus 3 times before his crucifixion. It was at another campfire that Peter was hovered around. The townspeople said, aren't you one of Jesus' followers? And he says, no, not me. One of 3 times that he denied Jesus before Jesus went to the cross. And so this, I am sure, weighed heavy on Peter, especially after Jesus was crucified and he came back, resurrected from the dead, and spoke with Peter firsthand. There was a Sunday school teacher who was having a young adult class, and she was talking about Peter's denial, and she was talking about how the disciples reacted when Jesus was crucified, and how they had gone away. And so she asked, why do you think that happened? And one of the students said, Peter went home to hide. Peter went home to hide because he was ashamed of the fact that he did not stand up for Jesus. He was ashamed that being the rock upon which Jesus was going to build his church, he could not even speak to people he did not even know about Jesus Christ. And so there's this feeling of guilt and shame that has carried on with Peter, even through the resurrection, to the point that even though he has seen Jesus face to face, he was very easily convinced with the group to go back to fishing because he doesn't have to handle all that. I mean, there he was face to face with the one he denied in that room when Jesus said, peace be with you. And yet Peter's going, oh boy, this is getting too close. He goes back to fishing. But Jesus meets him where he is, and that's what grace is all about. Jesus met him where he was, and after they had had their breakfast, he pulled him aside, and he started with a question. And he said, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? And Peter said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Then Jesus said to him again, feed my lambs. Second time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And he said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And Jesus said to him, then tend my sheep. And then the third time he said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter felt hurt because he said to him the third time, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. And Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. It's interesting, as we heard Leo's translation, that the wording was a little different. Remember, it said, Peter responded at least two of the times, he said, you know I'm your friend. You know I'm your friend. And it's interesting because the word love, as we know in the New Testament, through the Greek, comes in three ways. There's the agape love, which is the God-centered devotional love. The connection that one has with God is an agape love. And it is an unconditional love that is there. Then there's eros love, and that's the sexual love that goes on between two persons. And then the third is the philios love, or the friendship love, the brotherhood love that we think of when we think of Philadelphia. It is the city of brotherly love. Philios is that brotherly love. And so we have those three words within the New Testament that all speak of love. And in this passage, we actually have two of those three being used in different settings. We have the agape love, and we also have the philios love. Now, Jesus, in the first two times that he speaks to Peter, he talks about agape love. He's saying, Peter, do you love me? Do you love me with a God-given love? Do you absorb everything we are in relationship with each other? Do you love me so that you will go unconditionally out and serve me? Do you love me with that agape relationship? And Peter responds with a philios love. And that's why your translation is saying, I am your friend. It is because he's responding very surface level, but very true and very strong. We know how strong friendships are. We know a good friend is a support and a leader, someone that can be with you in the roughest and the most joy-filled times. So that is a strong bond as well. And he's saying, yes, I'm your friend. Don't you understand? I'm your friend. And Jesus challenges them again the second time with the same agape love. And he says, do you love me? Do you love all that has been going on between us as we have learned together over these 2 years? Do you love me? Do you have that relationship? And Peter again responds out of only what he can at that time. He says, yes, I am your friend. Of course I love you. I am your friend. And that's when Jesus turns his focus and he says, I have to meet him on his level. At this point in time, with him moving through this transition into living without me, I'm just going to meet him where he is. So he asks him, do you love me with philios love? Are you my friend? And Peter says, after this time, he says, when he was asked that time, he really was hurt. He said, doesn't he understand? Because Peter's in this one mind. He said, he is my friend. He is my solid. He is there when I need him. I will follow him. He will be there for me. He has that solid thing going from 1, 2, 3 questions. But Jesus has come from the lofty down to meet with Peter right where he is. And so Peter says, yes, I am your friend. So what takes place here is Jesus has then taken away those 3 acts of betrayal with these 3 questions of love. 3 times he challenges him. There is forgiveness, there is grace, there is that presence of God's healing in the relationship between Jesus and Peter. And he says to him, if you read the words, after each of these questions, he was supposed to do something. Do you love me? Well, then do this. Do you love me? Then do this. He's saying it's got to be more than words. It's got to be an outpouring of your life in response to this connection that we have. If you are truly my friend, if you are truly in love with me, then you will do something about it. You will lead your life, make your choices based on what's deep, deep inside of you, not just what's up here, the rational thought of, I've walked with you for 3 days, it was dusty, it was long, I gave up a lot, and yeah, I'm your friend. Move beyond that to say, what can I do? My time is your time. I will do anything to thank you and to lead a life that you have called me to. And so Jesus charged him. And he charged him first to feed my lambs. Notice he says, feed my lambs, tend my sheep, feed my sheep, not tend the lambs globally. Don't just tend the sheep globally. Mine. And that reminds us of a passage back in the 10th chapter of John, where Jesus is talking about being the good shepherd and reminding that the good shepherd takes care of his sheep, that he is the entrance into the fold, that the sheep lies down at the opening so that the shepherd lies down at the opening so the sheep will not go out. He is the one that gives all for the sheep. And then in that same passage, he uses these words. He says, as the Father knows me, even so I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And other sheep I have, which are not of this fold. Other sheep I have, which are not of this fold, them also I must bring, and they will hear my voice, and they will be one flock and one shepherd. My lambs, my sheep. And Jesus is saying to his friend, take care of them. Transformation takes place for Peter at that time. He now becomes that rock upon which the church is built. Because we know that when the Holy Spirit comes at Pentecost, came at Pentecost, and will come in 2 weeks on Pentecost, we hear that powerful sermon that Peter gives before all of Jerusalem who have been touched by the Holy Spirit. And he authenticates Jesus Christ as the Son of God. Up before all these people, this bold disciple regains his boldness and he pushes out. And we know that Peter goes beyond just speaking. His life is an example. For he goes out among the Gentiles and he brings them to Christ. He helps to bring the household of Cornelius, a leader in the Roman government, to a conversion in Jesus Christ. And it is those very acts that we're hearing about in the book of Acts when Peter is there with probably Paul and Silas and James and others at the council in Jerusalem, which is what they were talking about in the passage that Leo spoke of. There was contention in the new church. The followers of Christ have gathered together from homes to now churches and church gatherings, not church buildings, church gatherings. And there was division among them because there were those who came to the faith in Jesus Christ through Judaism. And there were those like Cornelius and others who came from the Gentile realm. And they were coming in and they were all worshiping together. And there was division because those of the Jewish tradition were saying, these Gentiles must first become Jews before they are Christian. They must first go through the rites of Judaism and being circumcised and live by our laws before they become Christian. And there was a division because through what Jesus was saying, that all were one regardless, and that you didn't have to go through a process, you were just there. And so with this discussion that was going on that led to our passage was, how are they going to decide? James, the half-brother of Jesus, was the leader of the Jerusalem church, and he was leading this conversation. And he says, look at what Peter stands for. Look at what he has done to bring these people together. And the discussion then went on to say, we must not require circumcision. But there are certain things that maybe we need to follow for now. The dietary laws, that is a visual witness to the people that is against Judaism. So let's tweak it a little, let's compromise. And so the Jerusalem Council was working on that at this time. And this was a result of Jesus saying, if you love me, Peter, then you need to give up fishing and you need to do what you are called to do. You need to go and take care of my people. The ones who are close in our little congregations, he said, you need to feed them, continue to give them the word of God. But those sheep that are of another fold that are coming in on us, you need to tend to them, recognize them, affirm them, and then also feed them the word of God. The challenge goes out to us as well. It goes out that we might be able to grab hold of just what was going on in Peter's mind at this time and how his life then took a whole nother route. If you were to answer those same questions from Jesus this week, what would your response be? Do you love me? And my lambs. As we gather together as a nation on this Memorial Day holiday, we are reminded that we are all connected, whether it is in our culture, whether it is in physical connections, whether it is in our faith. We are connected together and therefore have the responsibility of each other. It is so easy to sit back and say, well, somebody else can do it because I don't have the time, or I've done it. All those years I've done it. And yet, what then does it say for us? The thing that keeps going through my mind is that image that comes from the Christmas Carol. When Scrooge is saying, they were asking for alms for the poor, and Scrooge says, what? Are there not institutions? Are there not workhouses? Let them take care of it. And then he opens up, and you see these two frail children underneath the robe of the Spirit. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's easy to push it off, but there is something that we each individually have a responsibility for. And that is a response that we have to Jesus say, do you love me? Yes, Lord, I do love you. And I love you in this way, A, B, and C. And I think I've checked it off. Is that enough love? And then I think he loved me by stretching out his arms that I might live. Let us pray. Well, Lord our God, as we go forth today, we go forth with this image of Peter standing humbly before Jesus and answering his cries. Do you love me, Peter? Do you love me? Do you love me? And Peter, not really comprehending what it all involved, he said, yes, Lord. Yes, you know I love you. But Jesus was saying, okay, then put your money where your mouth is, Peter. How are you going to live out this love? What is it you're going to do? And Peter must have had a moment of awareness as he stood there with the waves lapping at his feet, the presence of his Lord. For his life turned around and he became the pillar of the church. He became the one that helped to bring the Pentecost experience alive. He became the one in which the others were able to follow, and the message of our Lord Jesus Christ was able to go out. Lord, you call each of us to respond to how much we love you. Help us not to put a limit on our love, but help us always to be open in the ways, both great and small, where you are calling us to use our lives, our words, our actions to bring that love of healing, of hope, of strength, and accountability to others. Be with us as we leave here today, that your message will continue to move within us so that it comes to an understanding of where it fits in our regular order of life. And if it works against us, help us to find a way to adapt so that your love continues to flow. We thank you, O Lord, for this opportunity to gather and to witness. And we pray all of this in the name of Christ our Lord.